All right, let's dive right into this explainer and unpack the sudden, dramatic breakdown in the latest high-stakes U.S.-Iran peace talks. We are looking at a situation with some absolutely profound global implications, stretching from spiraling global energy markets all the way to a heavy shadow looming over international diplomacy. It's basically a complex web of military action, economic leverage, and diplomatic maneuvering, and we're going to untangle the whole thing today.
Now, to understand why a recent highly anticipated Situation Room meeting ended with U.S. President Donald Trump walking right out without a deal, we first have to look at the firm red line drawn by the United States. The ultimate sticking point for the U.S. administration is absolute certainty on the nuclear front. Right after the meeting, the White House officially stated that the president will only make a deal that satisfies these specific red lines and protects American interests. But flip that over and juxtapose the U.S. stance with this incredibly stark statement from Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, who is Iran's lead negotiator. Coming off a week of tit-for-tat military strikes, this kind of rhetoric really highlights that Tehran currently has absolutely zero trust in verbal guarantees. They're operating from a position that demands concrete actions, which, as you can imagine, sets a highly contentious and volatile stage for any diplomatic talks.
To make sense of it all, we're going to break this massive international crisis down into 4 quick parts. We'll start with the walkout in Washington, then move into dissecting the 5 key demands, keeping the two sides apart. From there, we'll examine the broken ceasefire, and finally we'll ask, what happens next?
Let's start with Section 1, the walkout in Washington, where a 2-hour meeting ended without a resolution.
Picture this. It's May 30th, 2026. President Trump walks into the White House Situation Room fully intending to make a final determination on how to proceed with a potential ceasefire. A senior administration official had even teased that a deal was close. But, plot twist, the president leaves the 2-hour meeting without reaching any agreement to end the war. Despite all those high expectations, the session wrapped up with no final terms established. All because of deep, unresolved disagreements over some crucial issues that neither side was willing to budge on.
Which brings us to our second section, the 5 key demands, dissecting the core sticking points.
We aren't just looking at one isolated disagreement here. It's more like a giant, highly tense puzzle made of 5 interconnected demands. We've got the nuclear stockpile, the Strait of Hormuz, the Israel-Hezbollah truce, frozen funds, and the need for concrete guarantees. Let's dig into these competing perspectives one by one to see why navigating this negotiation is just so incredibly difficult.
Starting with the nuclear stockpile, we run straight into this critical number, 60%. According to the International Atomic Energy Agency, the Islamic Republic currently holds 440.9 kilograms of uranium enriched up to 60% purity. Now, you might be wondering, why is that specific percentage causing such a massive roadblock at the negotiating table?
Well, the crucial thing to understand here is that 60% purity is a remarkably short technical step away from the 90% level, which is the threshold for weapons-grade material. On top of that, it's widely believed this material is buried deep under 3 nuclear sites that the U.S. actually bombed last year. So, because it's literally that close to weapons-grade capability, the U.S. is drawing a hard line. They're demanding an absolute halt to enrichment and insisting that this highly enriched uranium be completely unearthed and destroyed, or handed over to another country.
Then we have sticking point number 2, the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. is demanding that Iran clear the naval mines it laid within 30 days and completely reopen the strait. In exchange, the U.S. would lift its naval blockade. Meanwhile, Iran is claiming absolute authority. An Iranian foreign ministry spokesman flat out asserted that the future management of the strait concerns only Iran and Oman. They're even claiming they hold the authority to extract tolls from any passing ships, completely rejecting the U.S. framework.
To put into perspective why the U.S. and honestly the entire global community cares so much about this specific stretch of water, consider this. A staggering 20% of the world's entire oil supply passes right through the Strait of Hormuz. 20%. It is a vital global choke point. Any closure, any mining, or any dispute over tolls doesn't just affect the U.S. and Iran. It deeply and instantly impacts global energy markets, sending them spiraling and essentially creating an international economic crisis.
And the plot thickens with regional politics and some deep historical distrust. Iran is insisting that any bilateral agreement with the U.S. has to include a wider truce between Israel and the Iran-backed Hezbollah and Lebanon, which is an area where fighting is actually intensified, despite all the talk of a nominal ceasefire. Add to that Iran's demand for ironclad guarantees. The Iranian leadership is deeply skeptical of any promises, specifically pointing back to the United States' withdrawal from the landmark 2015 nuclear deal during President Trump's first term. They want concrete actions first, firmly stating they have zero trust in mere words.
Next up, we have a massive financial hurdle, $12 billion. Iran is insisting that this specific amount in frozen assets be released right at the start of the announcement of any memorandum. They want it as a strict precondition before moving forward with any other phases of the deal.
But the U.S., they gave a hard no to that financial demand. President Trump explicitly stated no money will be exchanged until further notice. The U.S. position is crystal clear. Other phases of the negotiation, specifically dealing with that nuclear stockpile and unblocking the Strait of Hormuz, absolutely must be satisfied before any financial assets are unfrozen.
That takes us to Section 3, the broken ceasefire, where we look at the deteriorating situation on the ground.
It's really vital to step back and look at how rapidly things have unraveled. We started with a delicate Middle East truce reached on April 8th, but wow, did that collapse quickly. By mid-May, Washington and Tehran were accusing each other of violating the truce, which led to U.S. strikes on the southern Iranian port of Bandar Abbas. Those strikes were immediately met with Iranian retaliatory fire, and it's this exact cycle of tit-for-tat military escalation that culminated directly in that failed May 30th Situation Room meeting we've been talking about.
Let's wrap up with our final section. What happens next? Because honestly, the path forward right now remains highly uncertain.
We are basically looking at a complete and total geopolitical stalemate. The U.S. maintains that a deal is close, but they insist they will only sign an agreement that fully satisfies their strict red lines on nuclear weapons and global trade routes to protect America. On the other side, the Iranian leadership laid out their terms bluntly. Cash for cash, credit for cred, nothing for nothing. Neither side is willing to take that first step without the other yielding.
Ultimately, the sheer complexity of these negotiations leaves the entire world in a very precarious waiting game. Think about it. With nuclear material just a short step away from weapons grade, billions of dollars frozen in limbo, and 20% of the world's oil transit hanging in the balance, the stakes literally could not be higher. We've seen the opposing demands, the deep historical distrust, and a very real timeline of military escalation. So the most critical question remains for the global community. Who will blink first, and can a deal actually be